So how many thumbs do we have?
Three thumbs.
Three? I want to give Sherry. Nate, we need you to, Andy, will you help us? Okay.
So we're gonna give them the thumb like first.
Before you, Nick and Leonard, before we bring you out with the church, you'll take them out, give them the thumbs. Sherry first,
There's only four mics.
and Ted.
You guys need
Oh, no, not so we can share.
I'm gonna give somebody my mic.
Yeah, we'll share here.
We try not to speak simultaneously.
Yeah, we share. So who wants? Oh, he's got it. Yeah, give it to
I know you need your
Ted.
Okay, I'm not gonna make you wait for this. Let's just call out Sherry, Bob, and Ted. And we give you a golden thumb. These are actually, well, originally cast from Roger's thumb, from his hand, yeah. Yes, and so they've been reformulated a little bit over the years, but this one is for Sherry Springer Berman, and we are so happy that we talked about having 6 women directors at this festival. Thank you for being one of the 6.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
And Robert, thank you for not being one of the 6. No, here's your thumb. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hello?
It has to be presented to you, Ted.
He just takes.
He's
Commenting
takes.
already.
He's a producer.
He's a producer. Okay. Ted, will you accept a golden thumb?
Thank you, Chad.
Here.
There we go.
Come over a little bit.
That's how the pros do it.
And we're going to add to this panel for a Q&A session the very great Leonard Maltin and Nick Allen.
Where do you want me? Is this your seat?
We're going in the middle. All right.
Okay.
Microphone. All
All right. First, can I just say, just for me, I'm not presuming to speak for anybody else here, but what a pleasure to watch this film again. Just it's so good. I mean, I could go on and on, but yeah, well, no, I could do it easily, because it makes it all the more exciting knowing that it was your first sort of it's a narrative film that incorporates your background as documentarians, but it was the first time you'd done a feature with actors.
That's right.
Yep.
And so it's essentially your first feature film. That's a first feature. And that you cast the way you did, that you created this incredible film within a film, the ultimate meta movie, is just remarkable to me. So that's not a question, it's just a compliment.
You should know, too, they also wrote it. It got greenlit on the first draft, and the second draft got nominated for an Oscar.
So, given your documentary background, I love Off the Menu. We can go on talking about that some other time, about Chasen's. But that's a wonderful film. And you made other stuff leading up to this. How did you conceive this radical and unusual framework for telling a story? It's like the first postmodern biopic.
Have a mic. Oh, hi. Well, basically, this Harvey and the comics, Ted sent us, we must have been crazy, because Ted sent us a package. He said, I have a project for you guys, and you're going to do it. You're the people to do it. And then he sent us like a box of random American Splendor comics and a video.
Demanded all of them back.
Yeah,
They were priceless.
and a video cassette of, literally a video cassette, which shows you how old it was, of Harvey on the Letterman show, and said, figure this out. You have to figure out a movie. And that was a bit of a challenge. And then I remember there was a point where I remember going through the comics and seeing the Who is Harvey P. Carr, the speech, the thing that ultimately became the part of the movie where Paul does that soliloquy, that monologue about the phone book. And then it was like, wait a minute. There's all these versions of Harvey P. Carr. It's like, who is this man? And it opened the door to the idea of doing, we looked and it's like different people drew him and he looked different with different artists. And suddenly it was like, wow, this gives us the license to make the multiple Harvey P. Carrs. And then we just ran with it.
There's a little more kind of in like the magic of cinema about the origin story of this too, in that I had dreamed of getting it made for years and had the rights and had gone and spent time with Harvey and Joyce and videotaped them. And along the way, it was like, wait a second, the movie's not about Harvey, it's about a family that comes together. And you gotta have Harvey in it. What I really need is like a husband and wife documentary team that has written biopics, and they'd done some Hollywood screenwriting for like Escobar. I'd read their script on Escobar that has like an untraditional approach to biopics. God, I'll never find them. And then literally the next day, because I didn't send them to you, you walked into the office to meet with Ann, and I was like, oh my God. And I hustled after them as they left and said, would you please take these comics with you and give them back?
And then
Smart on both counts.
Ted had said, before you commit, you have to go to Cleveland and
That's
spend
true.
time with
That's
Harvey.
true, too. That's true.
Because
So,
he knew it was an ordeal.
so Harvey picked the hotel. On Harvey's recommendation, Ted booked us at a hotel that was basically a hotel where people recover from all kinds of illnesses. And it was
part of the Cleveland Clinic. It was like associated with the Cleveland Clinic. But it was also where Night and Day was, where Cole Porter wrote Night and Day. So it was like everything about Harvey in one hotel. It was like music and cancer and all rolled
I
up
mean,
into
there were people getting dialysis in the lobby, you know. So like, Shari and I checked in, and we were like, "What the hell have we got ourselves into?" And then we met Harvey and Joyce, and it was just, 3 hours of them fighting, in front of us, and violently fighting and screaming at each other, and somehow it just clicked, like. For some reason.
We were like, oh, we love them. This is perfect. We want to spend at least a year of our lives with these people. And then Harvey called us, because he had rejected a few people. So he was really picky. And he called us, he's like, man, I just felt really comfortable around you guys. So it was meant to be.
Tone is a very important thing to this movie. It feels like at the beginning, it's the audience is loving, they're laughing and so forth, but it transitions to a pretty intense story about death or about, as you say, a family that grows. And I was wondering when you guys were making it, there was a lot of discussion about whether it's too dark or too funny and trying to find that spot where people could watch this guy who's a bit miserable, a bit sad, but relate to him and then ultimately feel for him.
Bob edited it, so he should probably answer that question because it was a big editing project.
Was it different much in the script then compared to the second draft that you guys had with the...
It really wasn't. I mean, we had to write it really quickly because there was a threat of a Writers Guild strike too, so we had to write it immediately. And we had written all these little placeholders where the documentary sections would go because we had no idea what would happen there. And I think the tone came from the comics. I mean, the comics really there's a kind of odd comedy to the way Harvey sees the world. And, he also dealt with some really heavy stuff. So I think it was just naturally born out of the tone of the comics. And then when you combine that with the kind of jazz that he liked, so, and then, the visuals from Crumb and whatnot, it just kind of, in a lot of ways, it just was a very natural.
You're underselling. It's so I think it's so remarkable, like as a first feature, because tone is like one of the hardest things to deliver in a movie, and like that whole crew, everyone that Bob and Sherry and we all picked in the movie went on to do other things. It was very sad to watch it. Therese Dupre, who was the production designer, passed away this year, and she'd done many great movies and. Everyone went on to different sorts of things. And there was we were talking beforehand, I think some of the things that got everybody locked in, there was such camaraderie on the crew. Some of it was because I think we started prep on September 15th, 4 days after 9/11, 2000.
Wow. And your office was...
Yeah, our office was you had a full view of it.
It's like a laugh to keep from crying kind of idea, or like this movie is so embedded in the idea that you can't just have everything be very funny or everything be very sad. It's going to be, they're interchangeable ideas.
Ordinary life is complex stuff.
What a great line.
Talk to us about...
Those guys wrote that line, by the way. That was not a Harvey line.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like one of his most quoted lines, and then I remember that we actually wrote that.
Don't tell anybody. Let it keep it a secret.
Safe here. Secret is safe here. Tell us about casting then.
Well, this is a big advertisement. Actors don't really audition very often once they're even mildly well known. I mean, you don't have to be a big movie star. You have to just have like maybe a few movies under your belt, and most actors won't audition. And Paul Giamatti was not someone that we were like thinking of, perfect for the part or anything. He was Pig Vomit in the Howard Stern movie. He had been in, which he was amazing in.
Oh, that was a great performance.
Yeah, great. And then he was known for that. He had been in Big Mama's House.
And Big Fat Liar.
Big Fat Liar, yeah. And I think...
Several Good Machine productions.
Yeah, he'd done smaller roles. He was not a big star. And he came in and he auditioned. And there was no question by the end of the audition that, we taped him. I wish we could find that tape. He was Harvey Pekar. It was a little bit of a battle to get, and Ted was very instrumental in allowing us to do, we fought a little bit to get permission because he wasn't the biggest star. But it was a very low-budget movie, so they were like, okay, you can cast him.
And then you miraculously find the perfect person to play opposite, Hope Davis.
You want to talk about Hope?
Well, you've seen Hope in other things. She looks nothing like that person. But there was a quality that she had, in some of other movies that we had seen that we thought would work, And she just killed it. She really did. And it was funny because I remember when we started, filming, she said, I really want to spend time with Joyce. And I said, okay, Hope, but I am telling you that, like, this is my number. You know, when you're ready to be saved, call us. And she got really angry at me. She's like, I want to spend time with the person I'm playing with, who I'm playing on the screen. I mean, this is really important to me. I'm not going to be calling you. She was there a half hour with her, and she called us. Said, come get me now. I mean, Joyce is just, she's amazing. I love her, but she's just, she's a force. And I think, I Hope got nominated for a Golden Globe for the performance. And, watching it again, I just marvel at how wonderful she is in the film,
I remember Hope said at one point while we were shooting, it was like late at night, and she sat down and she was just like, can you just tell me something? And we're like, what? And she said, why me? And we're like, what do you mean? She goes, what about me made you think that I was right for this part?
So I have to ask then, what happened when Paul met Harvey for the first time? I can imagine that meeting was...
I could tell you one thing and then these guys should talk, but I don't know if everybody knows this, but Paul Giamatti's father was the president of Yale and the A. Bartlett Giamatti, and was the commissioner of baseball.
They know that, out here.
Yeah. Pete, right. Anyway, so when Paul was really excited to meet Harvey, and Paul's a huge reader. He loves books. Harvey loves books. Harvey was the most well-read person I've ever met. Really, like the definition of a working class intellectual. And Harvey looked at Paul and said, wow, you had some father. How are you ever going to live up to that?
So there's a third movie to be made then.
Yes.
Which is the behind the scenes of behind the scenes.
So much behind the scenes.
Yeah, with these people, these incredible people.
It was kind of remarkable. Like Harvey literally would take the crew out in small batches, record shopping on the breaks. He would come in, want to know when we were going to lunch. We thought to get food, but so he could sleep on the set because we had taken the furniture and he missed it, and he just wanted to sleep on the couch. Like the crew loved Harvey and stayed in touch with him for years. They were bonds.
Did Harvey have any kind of editorial say, I suppose? Like you guys run a cut by? No, I'm not saying like he run your movie, but did he have that's too much?
He didn't read the script.
He truly.
The first time we showed him the movie, he fell asleep. He couldn't even stay up.
Do you remember what?
Sorry. He's not making that up. He really fell asleep.
Wow.
I remember after that, I was like, so Harvey, what'd you think? And he was like, it's okay. I wanted, the critics like it. But the stuff that happened after that, Harvey was manic depressive, and he, sometime after we had stopped filming because he had felt such a loss of the crew, that daily interaction, he had finally retired from his job. Sometime around that, he threw himself down the stairs, and there was a tough recovery, and he was in a dark space when we had shown him the film. But the most remarkable thing for me, I think one of the top experiences I've ever had in a movie theater was when we showed this film at Sundance. Like, he really didn't think it would go over at all. He had little expectation. And we had a long standing ovation, and I could see Harvey get taller and bigger, and 15 years just fell off of his life. He was, basically at the end, didn't think he would write anymore, and he wrote 5 or 6 more books after the movie came out. It just gave him such a lease on life, just restored him.
And then Joyce dragged him around the world with the movie. I mean, we went all together, which was really amazing. And we actually met Roger and Chaz in Cannes. We took Harvey and Joyce, and they went without us even, and literally promoted the movie all over the world. And Harvey had a completely new lease on life.
He'd never been to France before Cannes.
He'd never been out of Cleveland, barely. I mean, literally.
Yeah.
He was also, this is another behind-the-scenes story that's incredible. The movie opened on a Friday, which happened to be the same day as the blackout, where the whole East Coast blacked out, and I don't remember what year, what was it, 2003, I think. There was a blackout across from the whole East Coast all the way down, I believe, to like Michigan. And that was
in New York in a hotel, in the dark.
calling us hysterical.
And so Joyce had to make a comic out of it, and they used it as an ad in the paper, to advertise the film. And it was like, I can't believe my movie's opening, and there's a blackout. No one will go see it. It's a complete disaster.
And I'm stuck in this hotel.
But it did well the first weekend, even with the blackouts.
Ted, you've produced so many movies, and you've been an executive who's overseen a lot of movies as well. You obviously don't go into a project like this with expectations of a blockbuster, and that's not why you're making the movie, and that's not why you make most of the movies you've made. They've been made from the heart. They've been very, creative and experimental, even at times, as this one is. What do you expect? What do you hope to achieve in making a film like this, which is, again, every film costs money, and obviously you put a lot of yourself into this, winning over Harvey and Joyce and all of that.
Oh, thank you. I loved Harvey's comic books, first and foremost, is where it came from. I had collected them. They had moved me. I had given them to lots of people as gifts, the collection. He was, how many American poets, American artists do you know that have regular jobs? They're William Carlos Williams and Harvey Picard, right? And so he was an idol of mine, which from the very beginning of wanting to make film school time, wanting to make movies, this was one of those ones that I had as a dream. I remember once talking to Darren Aronofsky, and he had said, he finally had made the 6 movies he had wanted to make in film school. He'd finished all of them. And I was like, wow, I only had one. And I needed someone else to make it. I think it was precisely that I had always loved hybrid movies. Not that there's so many of them, but from Medium Cool and other things that I had seen were kind of touchstones for me. And the content of this kind of dictated the form. So it was just that kind of waiting for the right people to walk into the office one day. Literally, that's what it was, and kind of kismet in its own way. And that was the driving force. And many times along the way, you'd kind of almost give up, trying other filmmakers, not knowing the way into it. And then 9/11 happened, and with this movie, we didn't know every sort of thing. We hadn't planned the animation. The title sequence, which I think is one of the best title sequences, and it could be the best title sequence in a movie I made. What was
it's been imitated a lot.
Yeah, but it was a pretty late addition. We were all kind of struggling with some things, and it solved so many issues and was just perfect. And we had the gift of a great corporate partner, which is really rare. We didn't have clearance on the Letterman footage yet. And they said, I had been in conversation with what are they called, Giant Pants or whatever his company.
Worldwide Pants.
Worldwide Pants. For a year and a half plus. They the tapes that we used were in there forbidden. There was like tape 173 through 176 are forbidden. And they were like, oh, we can't even. I was like, we want to access those and use those. And they were like, oh, we can't access those. We don't even have them. I said, well, I already have them. I'll send them to you for your library because I bought them on the internet or somewhere along the way. But like all those things, and it wasn't until every little piece, all that beautiful music, I think we had blown through our budget. We had like $25,000 left, and that music cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to license. And luckily, the head of the HBO movie division had completely fallen in love with the movie. And he said, no, I want you to have all that great music. And it's just like the executives, at HBO, steam came out of their ear because they had been whipping us. And,
they also, suddenly decided they wanted to start releasing movies theatrically. We thought this was going to be a midnight movie on HBO somewhere. They really just kind of gave us a tiny budget and said, do what you want. And then while we were making it, they got this idea, like maybe we should start releasing some of our films theatrically. So
the more things change, the more they stay the same.
That's right.
I had told the executive when Bob, I just blanked on her name, Maud Nadler, the executive, called me after Bob and Sherry left their office, and you could literally hear the door swinging shut, and she said, I want to do it, right? Like they had, won the room, the film got greenlit, and I had told her, it's going to win Sundance. I promise you, it's going to win Sundance.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And it won Sundance.
How confident were you when you said that?
I was totally full of shit. I'm a producer.
That's a great pitch. Just say, it's going to win the festival. Guaranteed.
By the way, I'm so glad you did get to use Stardust. In a film so full of irony, and irony is sort of the byword of Harvey Pekar in some ways. There's this, beautiful traditional song, part of the American song fabric, really, used the traditional way as a love song for a love scene, and it's just right.
I forgot we used that, actually, until I just watched it. A lot of the music I had forgotten that we had used. And I was just telling Ted that the closing song, the very slow version of Ain't That Peculiar,
How great is that? That's such a beautiful end credit song.
it's Mark Anthony Thompson, who had a group
Also
called
known as Chocolate.
Chocolate Genius, is Tessa Thompson, the actress's father.
Oh.
So, I think you had
We're learning all sorts of things.
I was a big fan
yeah.
of him.
Well, listen, they're going to give us the hook in a little while, so we're supposed to open it up to questions, right? For the audience, as long as we can before they lower the boom. And are there microphones out there? Okay.
We've got.
It now is upon someone there to speak up.
Where it gets good, you got to stay along.
Far right to you, far right on the floor.
There we are. All the way over there.
Hi, for Sherry and Bob, I'm really curious, since you do come from a documentary background and yet you have the scenes where you have Paul Giamatti and the other actors interacting with Harvey and the nerd guy, blanking on his name, were the things that Paul and the other actor were doing, were they scripted or were they genuinely you just set them loose to interact with them?
Yeah, I got one.
We had no idea what would happen, but we knew. It was funny because we thought, like, what is the film going to look like? We decided to go for a more natural look for the film, and make the documentary parts more artificial. Explore the comic book panel and the documentary sections, and so it was also, we had very limited time, so it allowed us to kind of throw everybody into one frame without cutting, and see what would happen. So. But we kind of knew, like, if you put Toby and Harvey together, something was going to happen that would be useful, or Harvey and Joyce. And the guy that plays Toby is Judah Friedlander. I don't know if you guys know him from 30 Rock. He looks nothing like Toby. And it's sad because every time I see him, he says, that was my greatest performance, and no one knows I was in that movie.
There's another irony.
But I do remember, like, it was kind of, people always talk about Gone with the Wind, how the script just said, one sentence, Atlanta burns. It was kind of the same thing on this. Like, it would say, Harvey and Toby talk about jelly beans.
That's all you needed.
Right here. Question to your left.
The structure of this film is brilliant, particularly when there are two actors on the stage playing Harvey and Joyce, while we're watching two actors in the audience watching two actors on the stage playing them, while we're being told the story by the real Harvey Pekar. How did you come up with the structure of this film? Because it's brilliant.
I don't. Thank you. I really think it was just paying attention to Harvey, and there was. It was right there in his comics, because here he was writing about himself and his life, and for us to make a movie about him, we would have to then be making a movie about a person who's constantly documenting themselves. So the meta of it was just sort of baked in. It's funny because after this movie, we had a lot of meetings, and people were like, "We want you to do more meta, bring your skill set." And it's like, well, we're not always going to do meta. It only works when it's relevant. And in this case, it was really what was called for in this story. So, I think we just paid attention to Harvey.
I loved seeing the play again and seeing Molly Shannon and Donald Logg. Like, Molly is from Cleveland, and we were filming over Thanksgiving, and we got some word. Molly Shannon has to fly to see her family for Thanksgiving. Do you ever seen she could do? Like, it was literally something like that.
Neat. Where's our next question?
To your right here.
Okay.
Hey, Matt Zeller Seitz. I'm one of the editors of RogerEbert.com. I normally go on the warpath against people who say, I have a comment rather than a question. This is not a comment. This is more of a confession. When this movie came out, I was one of the critics at New York Press, now defunct Downtown Weekly, and I gave this movie a mixed review. And I'm sitting here watching it again tonight, and I can't remember why. I can't remember why. It's a masterpiece, and I felt it was important that I publicly retract that completely wrong-ass review. And that's all I had to say.
That's very nice.
Thank you. A very gutsy thing to do, too, Matt.
Any retractions you want to make right now, Leonard?
Talk to me later.
We have another question over to the left here.
Hey, so one thing I would be very curious about is after the finished production, after, in foresight, or I suppose it wouldn't be foresight, but was there anything in particular that you would change now about the production of the movie, whether like anything minor, anything that you see and you just really wish you could change it?
None of us got paid.
About the production of the movie, yeah, there's probably some things I would change about the I'm an editor, so I watch the film and I think, oh, I know the cut. Like I still see there's certain scenes, the scenes that I struggled with, like that doctor scene. I think I finally found the cut for that doctor scene. that drove me crazy. But no, I don't think there's much in this movie that I would change. I'm pretty happy with it.
As well you should be. Next.
Far right.
Yeah, this was made before YouTube and social media. I wonder what it would have been like if Harvey had been on YouTube or, was a big social media star.
It's funny. It actually, The year it played at Sundance was the year that YouTube debuted. I remember, because the Sundance paper commissioned and wanted to cartoons that was in the paper, and I wrote something for them that dealt with this new thing that I had just discovered myself, called YouTube, and how I was so excited to see like the David Lynch shorts and the Lumiere shorts and things like that on it. But Harvey a lot of it was the kind of underground nature of him. I remember when we were preparing, it was actually to get the film greenlit, I had told my assistants in the office, we had to find every cultural touch point that Harvey had and print out from the internet sheets of that so we could show, this would be our marketing book, which was like jazz, working class labor issues, the comics world. And it was like, I don't care what you find, just make it 2 inches thick, so when you throw it on a table, it makes a bigger noise than that. So it makes a big resounding noise. And it was, a little bit show, but at HBO, when your movie gets greenlit, they have you talk to them. Then it was on a big VC. All the different department heads come together, marketing and all that, and there was probably like 30 people in the room around the table, and they all had a 2-inch Bible of all the printouts that we had done to market it. So it wasn't social media, but certainly the internet helped get the movie greenlit, because we convinced them that Harvey Pekar, who had never actually sold more, it was like something like 3,700 comic books, was his biggest print run ever. Like, it wasn't huge. We convinced HBO, this huge conglomerate, that this was a popular phenomenon and they needed to make a Harvey Pekar movie. So I guess like we had enough of it was enough of the internet, and thankfully not yet citizen journalism to expose our fake news.
It was really funny when HBO threw the premiere parties. They were huge.
I've never been
and
to a premiere that big.
Sets. They recreated sets from the movie that we went to the thrift shop to create because we didn't have a budget, and then they threw these really elaborate parties. It was very surreal.
We have one more question to your left.
One sequence that I'm interested in why you placed it where it was the Harvey Pekar phone book sequence, which seems so different because it was him out on the street basically doing a monologue with questions about his own mortality and whatever. And I wondered why it was placed where it was within the storyline of the film.
Well, I think, he was kind of going into delirium from the treatment, and right before that scene, he was saying that, am I a person or am I a character that I've created, and will that character live on after I die? So that was kind of, a motif in the film, Harvey thinking about his legacy and what he was going to leave behind. But then, of course, he has to muck it up with bringing all of these other Harvey Pekars into the equation to question whether or not, it's just an ego-driven question. So it just seemed like the perfect place to put it in the movie.
I just want to say that Harvey really cared about his legacy. He was very nonchalant about the movie and always said, I just want the bread. He spoke in sort of some kind of 1950s way, but hepcat. But this is one thing that really meant a lot to me. I mean, it was really sad. He passed away, I believe, in 2011. And I'll never forget, it got so much press. It was on the news, it was all over the internet, when he passed away. And I remember, I think I said to you, I was like, Harvey was really famous. He really left a legacy, and he would be really happy. So that to me was like the big accomplishment of this film, is that Harvey actually accomplished his dream of leaving something behind.
And I think the perfect closer is then it gets to show here on a beautiful film print. It's like so happy to see that, and even the one or two nicks I saw, I love.
The last reel needs to be fixed.
I still love seeing it, but you know, it's funny. You know, Harvey now has a statue in front of the Cleveland Library, which reminds me of a statue right in front here, and thinking of two poets who worked for a living. How nice is that?
It's ideal. Being the experienced producer you are, you knew that we needed a closer. So thank you for providing it, because we are out of time. Let's thank the filmmakers for being here tonight.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. Thank you.